Early this morning, 3 Massachusetts state troopers were arrested on charges of theft of government funds for fraudulently obtaining overtime pay for traffic enforcement shifts on the Massachusetts Turnpike that they actually did not work. Troopers Gary Herman, Paul Season, and Lieutenant David Wilson were arrested this morning without incident and will appear in federal court here in Boston later today. 2 of these men recently resigned from the state police, while one is on administrative leave, all in the wake of an ongoing audit at the state police about abuse of overtime practices. All 3 had been assigned to Troop E, which is headquartered in South Boston but has primary responsibility for enforcement along the Massachusetts Turnpike. Troopers in Troop E could earn overtime pay by working shifts in special enforcement initiatives. There were 2 of those, the first being the Accident and Injury Reduction Effort Program, referred to as the AIR program, A-I-R-E, and the second being the X-Team initiative. The goals of both programs were to reduce accidents on the pike by increasing the presence of state troopers on the highway and increasing speeding enforcement. To earn AIR and X-Team overtime pay, troopers were required to work the entirety of a 4 or 8-hour shift, depending which program it was. During those shifts, troopers would conduct traffic enforcement, including issuing speeding citations, of course. Troopers are, of course, required to truthfully report information on the citations that they write, accurately reporting time and date of shift worked, the sector of deployment, and traffic citations issued. They also must complete traffic citations, including the identity of the motorist and the vehicle, date, time, and place of the traffic infraction. During a state police internal audit of Troop E in 2017, police radio data was collected for the cruisers of troopers who were suspected of abusing the overtime system. That data included information about whether a particular trooper's cruiser was on or off at a given time. That information could then be cross-referenced with other records, including refueling records for cruisers, trooper inquiries to the onboard CJIS system, from which troopers and their cruisers get information about motorists, and internal state police records of traffic citations issued on a given date and time. As to internal records at the state police for traffic citations, that information could then be cross-referenced with records from the independent RMV database, which would show which citations had actually been issued to a motorist, as opposed to just residing within the state police database. All of this led investigators to a subset of state troopers who were paid for overtime shifts they did not work, a fraud that included forging or altering traffic citations to create the appearance that a trooper had in fact worked and issued citations for a given shift. More specifically, today's complaint alleges that on a regular basis, 3 members of the state police did not work some or all of numerous AIR and X-Team shifts for which they were paid. Trooper Gary Sherman allegedly concealed this kind of fraud by submitting to the state police internal database traffic citations he had written for earlier shifts, but with now altered date and times so he could reuse them for later shifts. He also submitted traffic citations that were simply fabricated. They had never been issued to an actual motorist while he was working. Trooper Herman earned $227,826 in 2016, which included about $63,000 of overtime. Of that, it appears that he fraudulently obtained about $12,500, essentially embezzling taxpayer funds through this scheme. And again, that was a single year. Like Trooper Herman, it appears that Trooper Paul Season altered citations to create the appearance that he had issued them during certain overtime shifts when in fact he had not done that. He also submitted citations that were never actually issued to motorists. Trooper Season earned about $163,000 in 2016, which included about $50,000 in overtime pay. Of that, it appears that in 2016 alone, he defrauded the state police and taxpayers of about $29,000. Finally, according to today's allegations, Lieutenant David Wilson, who was an officer in charge of overtime shifts at Troop E, including signing off on overtime shifts worked, also did not work some or all of his shifts for which he was nonetheless paid. Like the others, Wilson submitted a mix of altered and fake traffic citations, sometimes called ghost tickets. He earned about $230,000 in 2016, which included about $68,000 in overtime pay. Of that, it appears that he defrauded the state police and taxpayers of about $12,500 in that year alone. Let me be clear that today's charges are the beginning and not the end of this federal investigation. There will be ongoing federal enforcement in this area aimed at determining whether this is a systemic problem within the state police, and if it is, taking steps to fix it. We do not relish this kind of enforcement. I'm committed to supporting state and local law enforcement. The troopers and detectives in the Massachusetts State Police enjoy a well-deserved reputation for professionalism. But it's our job to investigate and prosecute public corruption, especially when it implicates taxpayer dollars, and especially when it compromises the integrity of a major state-level law enforcement agency.